What is up everyone and welcome back to another video. So in today's video, we're going to be talking about how to rank up super fast in Fortnite Chapter 5 Season 2. I'm sure you guys are familiar with it by now. A lot of people are struggling to get into the higher ranks and potentially get up into Unreal. And in today's video, I'm going to be telling you guys everything you need to know to rank up super fast, optimize your strategy, and overall perform way better. Before we get into it, be sure to drop a like on the video if it helps you out. Subscribe to the channel if you're new and you want to see more. All that helps me out an absolute ton. Thank you so much to everyone who does that. As we all know, getting good ping in Fortnite is super important. It's one of the most important factors that's going to be the difference in you winning fights, ranking up, and just performing better in general. But what if I told you there was a solution to that? That solution is an awesome app called Gear Up Booster. If you haven't heard of Gear Up, let me run you through it real quick. Gear Up is one of the premier apps used by tons of players and even pros like Miro, Reet, and Asian Jeff to improve their ping and their overall performance. Gear Up uses a process known as adaptive intelligent routing, which essentially means instead of your connection bouncing between servers to reach Epic servers, instead it's sent in a direct route through their private network, which improves your ping dramatically. As you can see on screen right now, this is directly from my Gear Up app. I had a 92% improvement in my ping, meaning that I would have had about 60 ping before and it brought me down to 32, which is an absolutely giant improvement and that's super noticeable in game. And depending on how close or how far you are from the servers, you can get even more improvement than this. So as you can see, it does make a giant difference. And although the main Gear Up app is only for PC, Gear Up also offers their HyperEv router for console players, which also reduces your latency dramatically. So even if you're on console and you can't do most ping apps, they're using the link in the description or up in the pinned comment. Thank you so much, Gear Up, for sponsoring today's video. So getting into the first topic of today's video, and we're going to be talking about the best game mode. The first topic people always ask when it comes to ranking up faster is going to be which game mode is best for ranking up in Fortnite, and honestly that's a good question. But the mode I see most people ranking up fast with is going to be solos. This is mainly for the fact that solos are super consistent. You don't have any teammates that can change your performance. You don't have to find random people to play with if you don't already have a team. I just find that it's easier to lose points in duos, trios, or squads relative to solos. In solos, even if you have a rough game, you're really not going to lose as much, or at least that's what it seems like. I do want to add a caveat here though. If you do have a very solid team, whether it's a duo, a trio, or a squad, then you can absolutely play that and still rank up a ton. If your team has amazing chemistry, then those modes can be even better than solos. Keep in mind that although for the average player, solos is probably going to be the most consistent bet, you can absolutely mix it up, especially if you have good teammates, and you can potentially gain even more. So I say all that to say it does depend on your situation, but hopefully that gives you a good idea for it. So getting into the next part of today's video, and the next topic I want to discuss is going to be your drop spot and your general early game strategy. In ranked, early game is one of the biggest issues most players have. They either seem to die off spawn too often, or they don't get enough loot to play out the game in a normal manner, and then they end up in shambles. When it comes to where you should land, you want to consider a lot of factors. Some of the main ones are going to be loot, materials, HP, and location. Starting with loot, of course you're going to need a spot with enough loot to support your team size. If you're a solo, this can be as little as like 5 or 6 chests along with some floor loot, whereas in duos, trios, and squads, you may need to opt for a larger size POI. Materials are pretty self-explanatory. Your spot should have enough opportunities to farm materials where you won't get caught up with no materials in mid-game. Bonus points if it has a good combination of wood, brick, and metal. HP is another consideration, and it simply means that if your spot doesn't have the craziest loot, try to find other HP opportunities around as well. These can be things like slurp barrels, slurp trucks, flow berries, or even fishing areas. Finally, the last consideration is location, and by location, I'm specifically talking about location on the map. If you're trying to play a super safe early game, then you may want to opt for an edge map POI. The only problem with it is that it can be super hard to rotate into zone if it pulls far. On the other hand, if you land somewhere near the middle of the map, then rotations are going to be easier, but it's also much more common to run into early fights. So once again, it's kind of a balance that you have to reach in terms of that, and a lot of that just depends on what playstyle you're willing to run. If you do need some additional help planning out your drop, then one great tool you can use is the website fortnite.gg. This website allows you to view the whole map, every single POI, every single unnamed spot, and it shows you every single item on the map and exactly where it's located, so it can help you a ton to find an underrated drop spot or to set up a loot route. I don't want to spend the whole video talking about early game, but I do want to give a couple more very brief tips for your early game strategy as well. Probably the bulk of this video is going to be about early game, but that's frankly where most people struggle anyway. First off, in early game, always scope out the players contesting you in the air. You want to look for where they're landing and make a mental note of where they may rotate. This is something so few players do for some reason, but it can help a ton later on when you're starting to look for them or end up running into a fight. It really helps to know where everyone is. As well as that, the next tip is you're going to want to land at the best location within your spot, which is generally the area with the best loot or the best position, such as high ground. This may allow you to get early picks, but overall it just mainly stops anyone else from being able to get the jump on you super early, and that's super important because obviously you don't want to die right away. And finally, my next tip for early game is a very simple one, specifically for if you're contested by multiple players, and that's to play for third parties. In early game, fights are often so shambles, and the people that fight first tend to just get third partied and die. So unless it's a super easy kill, then try to allow the people contesting you to fight each other rather than you fighting them first. That way you can just play as the third party and secure an easy couple of kills. Getting into the next part of this video though, and we're going to be talking about mid-game and fighting, which should be a relatively quick section because it's not an overly complicated portion of the game. The first thing I want to tell you guys for this part of the game is to try and play the dead side of every zone. The dead side is simply the side of the zone that people are not rotating into. In other words, stay away from the center of the map or the parts of zone that a lot of people are at. This will allow you to run into less third parties, and even if you play a little bit aggressive in this area, your fights are going to be pretty fair, 1-on-1, 2-on-2, or so on. You're going to run into a lot less third party situations, and overall your fights are going to be a lot more consistent. Next up, this tip is less direct for mid game, but if you do struggle in mid game fights, then you're definitely going to want to spend time grinding fight practice and creative. In these fights, your main goal should be specifically to end the fights fast, since most people in ranked are going to be trying to do the same thing if they're not in shambles. I won't go too crazy in depth in this video since it's not about creative maps, but I will go ahead and pop up 2 good fighting maps I recommend you try. On top is the speed realistic 1v1 map by Ken Beans, which pairs you with a random player with 1 person pushing and 1 playing defensive, and it forces you into a close range, fast-paced 1v1. And then the second map, the map on the bottom, is going to be by Raider464, and it's his realistic 1v1 map, which is a pretty standard style realistic 1v1 map, but it still does a great job of getting you a lot of exposure to fights super fast. So overall guys, definitely take those codes down if you find yourself struggling in fights, and they should be super helpful. And overall guys, if you followed these tips for mid game, there's really not a whole lot of them, but if you do a good job of following these, you really should not run into many issues. I'd say most players in ranked are probably going to find that surviving through mid game is easier than both early game and end game, because it's really just a matter of where you rotate and how you kind of strategize everything. And finally guys, getting into the last portion of the game, and we've got a very quick section, which is going to be end game. And honestly guys, when it comes to your regular ranked games, I don't have a lot of advice for ranked end games, since they're generally just an extension of mid game really. You're not going to have the crazy stacked zones like you see in scrims or tournaments, so really it's just going to come down to fighting. When it comes to end game, the fundamentals are always going to apply. You want to rotate as early as possible if it's realistic, look back at the players rotating late to pressure them, and of course if the game is stacked enough, then you're going to want to look for height towards the final few zones so you can secure the win. If you follow all of your fundamental concepts for mid game and what we've covered for end game, and you're just a decent fighter overall, then you should be in a fantastic spot to finish up your game strong and gain even more ranked as a result. Honestly guys, a lot of what end game comes down to is just the way you set yourself up through your early game and mid game, so that's kind of why those sections have been so much longer. If you set yourself up properly and you know the fundamentals, which we just talked about, then you should be in a really good spot when it comes to end game, and you should be able to secure some huge rank by doing that. But with all that said guys, that's going to wrap it up for today's video on how to rank up super fast in Fortnite Chapter 5 Season 2. Overall, we've covered a lot in this video, but hopefully it helped you guys out. By following all the tips we've gone over and all the general strategies we talked about, you should find yourself ranking up super fast, and hopefully guys, we can all reach the coveted Unreal rank this season. If you found this video helpful, then be sure to drop a like on it, subscribe if you're new to the channel and you want to see more, and as always guys, it's super appreciated if you could use code TECHO in the item shop. It's 100% free for you, and it seriously does help me out a bunch. As always, a giant thank you to everyone who uses it. And once again guys, be sure to check out Gear Up Booster if you want to improve your ping. It's going to be linked near the top of the description and in the pinned comment. It's a super awesome app, and I really appreciate them sponsoring today's video. Definitely give them a shot. But with all that said guys, thank you all for watching this video, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye for now.